Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Higher Ground, where I have my colleague Cathy joining us today to discuss a very important topic. But before we dive into that, I'd like to welcome Cathy. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Nick. I'm really excited about this.
Thanks, Cathy. So Cathy has actually been with our business for 5 years now, and she has specialized in the legal recruitment space. Cathy, do you want to share with our audience just a little bit more around your background and where it all started?
Okay. So background-wise, I'm actually an Italian by profession, and a lot of people don't know this. But my career was not linear, and I landed up in recruitment in 2002 when I was in Zimbabwe, and then moved across to South Africa in 2005, and still recruiting here. So I've been recruiting for about 20 odd years or so, and specializing in legal specifically since 2007. So that's at least, a good 17 odd years, if actually more than that. And been both in the agency recruitment environment as well as working in-house. So seeing both sides of the coin has been very, very useful in terms of how we engage with clients and how we engage with candidates and understand processes. So yeah, so I'm in the recruitment by bit, and I absolutely love it.
Fantastic, Cathy. Thank you so much. You always bring so much passion, when we're talking about your background and recruitment. So thank you for sharing that. So we're
Sure.
actually talking counter offers today. So let's shine a light on the psychology and pitfalls behind them. So we've seen how often it backfires, and we want to help people avoid that regret. So Red Eye has walked both
Yeah.
candidates and companies through messy aftermath of counter offers gone wrong, from short-term wins that turned into long-term dissatisfaction, to teams that were destabilized by sudden salary shifts. So we believe our insight will help our audience make smarter, more informed decisions based on today's podcast. And counter offers aren't they're not just about money. They're loaded with emotion. They're loaded with loyalty, pressure, and absolute panic. As experts
Mhm.
in the recruitment and talent strategy space, we bring perspective and clarity when things feel personal and complicated. And this episode of High Ground is about empowering both talent and employers to think strategically and not reactively. So, Kath, I think let's get straight into it. Um,
Yeah.
Now, Cathy, from your experience working with both employers and candidates, what are the key motivations behind accepting a counter offer as a candidate, and how often does it lead to long-term satisfaction?
Okay. There's several factors, thanks, Nicole. And it is, yes, counter offers become very, very emotive, I must say. And there's several factors that contribute to candidates accepting counter offers. I'll break it down. I've come through with about five. So first of all, the main one, which is the obvious one for a lot of people, is monetary, where a company, you've gotten a role, you're absolutely looking forward to joining the new company, and then your current guys offer you more money. Um, that is one big factor, and we cannot run away from that. So one is monetary. Second one, linked to monetary, is also title. So someone may have been wanting a promotion, vying for that promotion, maybe it hadn't come through, and then the threat of them leaving against the company to then promote them, and obviously with a new promotion, new title, more money. That's another thing that's really a big motivator for a lot of individuals. Um, Location can be a very, very telling factor. So it can be a huge determining factor. So if you are 5 minutes from home or 15 minutes from home, and then you get a job that's maybe 30 minutes, that 15 minutes makes a massive difference. And especially when you have been in your current organization for a long time. So when it's even further than that, especially when it's not a hybrid environment, you then start wondering whether or not it is a good move. You're going so much further away from home, as not it's not even silly as it sounds, it becomes a very, very big factor the longer somebody actually talks about it, thinks about it, and decides whether or not it's really worth them getting into traffic when they don't really have to do that. It's a very big thing now, especially post lockdown and post a lot of companies having full time work from home arrangements. Another element which is very linked to emotions is relationships. So the relationships built up in an organization. So especially if you've been in a company for a long time, you have made friends. You have friends who come to your house, who know your family, and you do things together. So that is a really big factor. And I had someone recently who actually said to me, now I have to actually start new relationships. And that is a fact. You don't lose your old relationships, I mean, especially when there's good friendships. However, from a work perspective, yes, it is a bit daunting, but that forming of new relationships, and especially if you have a great relationship with your current boss, they can then bring that into the foray to say, okay, why are you leaving? We really want you here. We really see that you can contribute, you add value. So the relationships are really important. And then fear of the unknown. So it's very easy for us to stay in our comfort zone, and it's comfortable as the comfort zone states. However, I always say to candidates, just think of the first time that you joined the company that you're in now. There was that fear, and you did not know what this company was going to be for you, how things were going to pan out. However, you got comfortable. It maybe took you a couple of weeks or a couple of months before you became an old hand, and then now you're comfortable, and now you're actually bringing in new people into the organization. So that fear of the unknown will always be there, and a new entity will always be an unknown entity. But it's important to put that fear in a box, deal with it for what it is, knowing, see the bigger picture for yourself to say, okay, yes, this is daunting, and admit it to yourself. So don't try and be brave. It's okay. This is where we are there as well, where we can hold your hand through the entire process. We can have a coffee, we can have dinner, we can have lunch, we can just have a call if you need to vent, because it's important to get to process the emotions and to process the journey that you're about to embark.
Absolutely. There were so many
Mm.
brilliant points in that, Cathy. And I just think back to all my interactions with candidates. And it's hard to
Mhm.
step out of your comfort zone into something that is completely new and foreign, where you have to build brand new relationships from the ground up. And people feel like they're starting from scratch, and that can be very intimidating. So, and people don't realize that in order to really grow and move those 5 steps forward in your career, you have to leave what you've built and know that you've built it brilliantly, and you take all those relationships with you. You never lose them, and people are inspired by you. They look up to you. You'll always be a role model or a coach for them, especially if you're in the same industry. So thank you for being real and providing those really good examples where people can relate. And so for employers, what should be the red flags or realities to consider before putting a counter offer on the table? I mean, can it damage team morale, or set tricky precedents? Can you help us unpack that, just so that we get a little bit of a thinking around that moment of panic? What are employers thinking when they receive that resignation?
No, you're right, Nick. There is definitely a moment of panic, especially when a company loses a really amazing employee who has been impactful, who has grown the organization, and who's also a great mentor and a great influence where the team is concerned. So the red flags, I'd say the immediate is, okay, offering more money. The team members are would be you'll find the team members in a space where they generally know, okay, if so and so has resigned, and then they change their mind at some stage after maybe 2, 3 weeks of discussions back and forth. This person has been offered more money. It's generally the first thing that comes through. So it can be damaging to team morale, and it is damaging to team morale actually, because then the team members start wondering, okay, if this person is now being paid so much more, and this is what they did to convince them to stay, why are we not valued in the same way? And why are we not paid at the same level? If the company does have the budgets to bring that in and to offer this person so much more, why are we not at the same level? So they don't necessarily have to know how much more was offered, but they
Yeah.
will know that the money conversation came up and this is what was probably put on the table. So there will be another speculation, and it starts breeding. There's a distasteful environment that will then
Mm,
be bred within the team, and it can also serve to isolate that person who has been counter offered, because now they will be viewed as a traitor, and this traitor then was paid so much to stay. So that team morale will the chances of that team morale being damaged are very, very real. And then secondly, you set the wrong precedents.
mm,
Where you find a candidate, say if you have a team member who is not too happy, and maybe they've come to you, there's certain elements that they're not happy about, or certain issues that they'd like addressed, do as much as you can to address those issues before you get to a conversation with the person resigning. So if they have, say, it's somebody who needs more flexibility because maybe at that point in their life, they have young children, they have drop-offs, or they have, all sorts of factors that affect them personally. Try and see where those can be accommodated, because often when they are accommodated, it's a big deal for this person, and you will find they will actually stop their job search because if they're loyal to the company. However, if they feel that my concerns are not being addressed and
mm.
nobody seems to care, then they start looking externally. So have the conversations. If someone is not happy, don't brush it aside. Dig deep and have a coffee with them, find out exactly what's going on, because each person's reasons for wanting to leave the team could be very different. It's not always monetary. So if a person feels I've applied myself so much, I've not gotten a promotion, the goalposts keep being shifted, maybe as a line manager, you need to actually analyze that to see, okay, what are we
Oh.
doing? Are we actually coming through for our people when it comes to assessment, promotions, and showing that they are valued? It doesn't have to be
Hmm.
more money, it can be other elements that are brought in.
Yeah, I love that, Kath. There's so many things that's like popping into my head. And I think as a business, it's so important to retain talent because there is a war for talent out there. Your people are going to be, how would you say, they're going to be tested all the time, in terms of, hey, there's this new opportunity. Would you be interested in having a conversation? There's going to be multiple of those opportunities that knock on your door. And I think it is very important to have very strong relationships with your team. But through an exit interview, you'd be able to kind of understand and unpack that a little bit more to understand what could we do better, what did we drop the ball on, etc. But again, counter offers are very tricky and, it feels like the trust is broken. So to remain in that team, does it really fix the root issue or does it just delay it at the end of the day? And I think that's what you kind of have to um, juggle with, unfortunately. And also, if someone's leaving the team, is to try keep that team still strong and connected so that, with someone exiting, it doesn't mean that, there are issues or whatever it might be. Let's continue working, as a team to, reach our objectives. I don't know if you wanted to comment on any of that, Kath.
Yeah. No, you're right in that where you mentioned that one, the trust is broken, and secondly, it's really is delaying the inevitable generally. I have an example of with a candidate I had a couple of years ago who accepted the counter offer,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew the reasons why he wanted to move, but I had also interviewed his boss. And his boss's frustrations were around certain things he couldn't do for his team. So, in this team member resigning, the boss offered certain things, but I knew for a fact that this person could not put that on the table. So, it did delay the inevitable, because 6 months later, the person then came back to say, listen, it hasn't worked out. It's not what I thought it would be. And we managed to place him somewhere else. But so him accepting the counter offer at that point simply delayed what was going to happen further down the line. So the company bought 6 months of this person. It's time in them, but then after the 6 months, the person left.
Yeah.
So, and they actually came through and they were very honest. They're like, you know what? I should have actually listened to you. You were right. But thank you for not blacklisting me, which was I was just like, look, people go through different things. So we do not blacklist you for that reason. And
Yes.
we carried on with a great relationship. And several years later, still in contact with this person. And they're always very appreciative of that because we managed to find something else for them.
Yeah.
And then on the point of I had someone else who I could have placed, I had three clients who would have taken this person on board in 2 seconds.
Wow.
But the reasons why she was looking to were that she needed flexibility. She had young children and she just could not do the straight 8 to 5 anymore.
Yeah.
And I knew from that that there was someone else who had that arrangement. So I simply said to her, listen, if I put your CV out there, yes, we're going to get fantastic offers for you. However, you're not unhappy where you are. This is the reason why you want to move. So I said, go back and speak to your line manager, explain to them what you need and why, and I'm sure there will be understanding. And this individual did. She went back, had a chat with the line manager, and they managed to give her the flexibility she needed. And she's still within this organization 15 years later. So,
Wow.
did I lose a deal? I did lose a deal. I could have placed her, but that may not have been a successful placement because it could have been a counter offer. We would have lost the deal. Our clients would not have been happy because now they're going back to the drawing board. So it's really good to be open and honest with say in our conversations with candidates and with clients as well, where we say try and get to the cause
Mm.
of this person's dissatisfaction before it gets to them getting other offers, and now you horse trading. It's a trust issue, becomes a really messy emotional affair as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm.
And so, Kath, how can candidates make the most informed decision when faced with a counter offer, especially when, those emotions, the loyalty, and the money? I mean,
Mhm.
all of these elements or components are at play. So, what advice would you give someone to help kind of zoom out and see the bigger
Yeah.
picture for what it is? What kind of, advice
Okay.
would you give?
So let's say the first thing is go back to what made you look for an opportunity outside in the first place. What were those reasons? Has anything changed where those reasons are concerned?
Mm.
So if nothing has changed, then there's purely a monetary element that's keeping you, or that your company is hoping will keep you in. If nothing has changed, then do not take that counter offer. Because before you know it, more money, you up your lifestyle. Before you know it, you're back to square one in terms of affordability of things. So first of all, you've got to analyze the reasons why you want to move in the first place. And then secondly, be very honest with yourself and be as objective as possible. Try and take the emotion out of it to say, have I actually done as much as I can with my current guys to get to what I need to get to? Have I been open and honest with them around what I need? And we always say to candidates, don't, if you have changed certain things in your lifestyle, your company is not obliged to meet those changes. So you make informed changes and don't live with them, but don't live beyond your means. For starters, you can't say, I need more money because I bought a new house, but then you bought a new house on your current salary. You can't expect your employer to come in and cover that. So it's always a case of, have I been honest? Did I have the conversations? And is it a boost to my ego getting
Yeah.
a counter offer? Because often it is. Where someone comes to us to say, oh no, but I've got a counter offer, they want me to stay. They want you to stay because it's cheaper to counter offer you than it is for them to go through a process. From a money perspective, from a time perspective, from simply and it's very, very time consuming, and where companies concerned, they lose so much time and productivity, depending on what your job is, when they now have to find a new person. So it's cheaper for them to counter offer you. So you have to factor that as a candidate. Are they doing this because it's cheaper? But also, one thing you need to realize is, should you accept a counter offer, and this has happened unfortunately with some candidates, where a company then goes through a restructure as opposed, as a result of macroeconomic factors, etc. And are you now going to be the first person who is impacted? You've really got to think of that because your loyalty is already in question. So if you are ready to leave, you may be the first person who is asked to leave the organization or who's impacted. So those are all things you need to think about. But just it must not be an ego decision, and it
Mm.
must not be a decision where you say, I told my friends and asked my friends and they told me it's a really good move. You do not, your friends do not haven't traveled that journey with you. They've only
Yeah.
seen the end results. So you've also got to be really careful around whose counsel you seek.
Yeah.
And if you're working with an agency, you're working with us, for instance, come to us. We know when these things happen, if we have had a fantastic rapport with you, we've been talking, we've been communicating, and then all of a sudden you ghost us, generally we know that something has happened. So it's not a first for us. So when you are counter offered, just come through to say, listen, this has happened. How should I manage this? And we will take you through. So if it's a good thing for you, we will see it and we'll let you know. Yes, we may lose you to our
Mm,
client, but
mm.
this is the best decision for you if the factors are aligned and they're right for you. But if it's a case of pure money, they want you to stay because they don't want to have to go through the process of finding someone else, we will also be very open and honest with you. At the end of the day, it's your decision, but try and get as much counsel from individuals who are as objective as possible so that you then make the right decision. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, Kath, that was so, so valuable, all of those elements that you just shared. And I think it speaks to let's be able to zoom out and look at the bigger picture and go back to originally why you got into the process, why you wanted to work for this new company and this new role. And I say to all my candidates, it's an absolute given. You will be counted offered. They will ask you if there's anything that they can do to keep you. And at the end of the day, I always believe it's a compliment. You've done a great job wherever you are. You've done incredible work. You've built great relationships. Obviously, they want to try and keep you, they want to change your mind. But at the end of the day, you take ownership of your career. You decide what's best for you. And it's important to have that support structure, like you mentioned, whether it's your partner, whether it's your coach, whatever it might be. So make sure that you're making those decisions based on the right reasons and it's in alignment with your values and your beliefs. You never want to be stuck in the same position 6 to 12 months later, which generally happens, and say, I should have taken that opportunity. I could have been a lot more further, or I wouldn't be feeling this way at the moment. So unfortunately, that's what counter offers bring. It's a lot of different emotions, a lot of different balls in the air. But I think, that kind of advice that you've shared, Kath, it really does add a lot of color. And so, I mean, as experts in this space, you and I, Kath, how do you guide both clients and candidates through the delicate moment? We call it the hardest part of the process is really just dealing with the offer, the counter offers, getting them over the line. Can you share a story where the right outcome was achieved, even if it meant walking away? And it may have been something that you've already mentioned, but yeah, maybe you can give us an example.
No, I mean I do have another one where the right outcome was achieved, but it was the right outcome for our clients, fortunately, where we did manage to place this individual. And they were an individual in so for me with the lawyers, often we find when people want to move out of private practice and go in-house, it's a
Hmm.
life decision for them. And it's a big change as well, especially if someone has only ever been in practice. In this instance, we managed to place someone out of one of the law firms into an in-house role. And this person is absolutely brilliant. And I actually said to them, you are going to do it. You have built fantastic relationships with bosses and with your teammates. You are like a family because I know because you have been sharing with me, how well things have been going and how happy you've been. But the fact that you want to move now is because you do want better balance for yourself. Apart from that, you also want to go in-house to be able to explore in-house better, to manage matters from start to finish, where you're not simply providing opinions and walking away. And that is why this person wanted to move on.
Hmm.
They were counter offers. They would phone me and they'd be like, feel like a parade. People aren't really, they're like whispering around me, and now I feel so bad. We would talk for 30 minutes at the end of the day, and I'm like, that's fine. People are actually dealing with it because I actually said to her, a resignation is almost like a breakup in a relationship. So to simplify it, I said that to them, and I was like, the person you're leaving is trying as much as they can to keep you, but you know the reason why you're moving away from this relationship. So keep your mind and your heart and everything focused on that reason. So they had the counter offer discussions. The company did try as much as possible, and I said to her, give them the room, hear them out. And at the end of the day, you still have made your decision and you will leave there with a good relationship with them still. So you're not burning any bridges, you're not telling anybody where to go. you're hearing them out, and the bosses will feel that they've done as much as they could, but unfortunately, they
Mm,
weren't successful in keeping you.
yeah.
And then I also spoke to the client to say, listen, this is going to happen when this person resigns. So what we need you to do is also reach out to them, have a conversation, have a coffee, start bringing them into your space. Not just from the HR perspective, but from the hiring manager to say, go through them, have lunch with them, maybe start including them in one or two informal work things with the team so that they start
Yeah.
meeting the team and they start feeling like, oh, they're becoming part of this new family. And that's actually worked really well. So by the time the person's notice period is over, it hadn't been an acrimonious period for them. It was really good in the end. And they then were looking forward to the new role, and they've been flying since they joined. So that worked out well for us, I must say.
Yeah.
But
That's
I always
brilliant.
say there are times when we have to bring in the hiring manager to say, listen, we need you to come in now. We need the person has bought into you and into your leadership. So bring them into your fold.
Such an important part. I mean, it's not just send the offer and, it's all up to the candidate and the recruiter. I feel like the client plays a very pinnacle or critical part in the process of securing them and getting them excited and getting them to feel comfortable with making the move and making the change, because at that point it becomes a reality and it's very overwhelming. And now you need to be mentally prepared to have the conversation and navigate the counter offers. But I love the analogy of it's now the breakup, because I always use the analogy of when you're interviewing, it's like you're dating. You either fit or you don't fit. And that is
Yeah.
completely up to you whether there is an alignment and a synergy. But yes, Kath, I think just to kind of close off on our counter offer discussion, which has been so powerful, and I hope that a lot of people in our audience can take a lot of good tips, on how to navigate that in the future. And thanks for keeping it so real and transparent, giving people really good examples to work with. We really truly reinforce relationships with both parties, candidates and clients. Both parties are really important to us as experts in the space. And it's so important for us to be authentic. And, we're really committed to getting, it's mutually beneficial but for both our clients and our candidates to have that successful outcome at the end of the day. So, Cathy, thank you again for sharing your wisdom with our audience. I believe your
It's a
input will
pleasure.
help many people out there, like I said, to manage and navigate those situations, and to give them the confidence, to say, I stand in my decision. Like, I'm really excited. This is what I want to do moving forward, and to just manage all the noise at the end of the day. So, Cathy, thank you so much for your time and your valuable inputs.
It's an absolute pleasure, Nick. And one last thing I'll say, if anybody needs help, reach out to us. We will talk you through this. We will take you through this how we're here. But thank you, Nick. This has been really, really enlightening, I must say. And I've enjoyed this. And I hope it does help people out there.
Absolutely. If not now, one day they'll find the podcast and it'll be the perfect time that they needed the advice. So, yes, from your career coaches here at Red Eye, thank you so much for joining us. Please make sure you follow us on YouTube, Higher Ground Series. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye, everyone.